Alright. I think I'm live. Back out here today. Chainsaw's just warming up. Gonna be cutting the rest of this 3/4 sill log here. Whew. Wish I could lift these logs up a little higher, get them on some sort of a platform so I didn't have to bend over quite as much. It's not even worth trying to figure that out though. I'm having a little bit of trouble sticking to my line on both sides. I'm like trending a lot deeper here in this initial cut on this little chunk. So I'm going to try to come in from the other side. But really at the moment, I'm probably going to have to just run the blade down there and shave some off. So I'm going to try not to lose any more height right here. And then I'll just try to even it out as much as I can. But I should be able to accommodate a little deviation just by how I cut the logs to merge, to marry them. Man, we had one of the worst group of guests we've had in 2 years of hosting people up here. One person on the reservation, which is usually not right. They usually just make a mistake. But our place holds up to 6, and they had more than 12, like double the number of people spending the night. There was like 10 cars in the driveway with one person on the reservation. They flushed tampons down the toilet, so our plumbing clogged in between guests. We had a same-day turnover, and we had to push back the check-in time for our next guests because stuff's coming up into our laundry room downstairs, getting on the carpet. I have to run to Home Depot and get a carpet cleaner. We have to scramble to get a plumber to come out to fix the clog in the drain. It's like we haven't had, you know, we had just had our septic tank cleaned out like a month ago, so that wasn't the problem. Anyway, they broke a door frame, they left the kitchen trashed, they left spills on the hardwood floor that warped one of the sections. We got the only call we've gotten from neighbors about noise at like midnight. And no mention of like the extra guests, which was, I think, maybe the surprising part. Like, we've had plenty of people be like, hey, do you mind if we have some extra people over for the afternoon or for dinner? And we're like, you know, yeah, of course. We don't let people spend the night over the 6 because that's all the prices. Well, sometimes, you know, 1 or 2 people sometimes, but for the most part, like, we priced it at 6, our permit's for 6, so that's not how we do things. But the craziest thing is this lady had like 30, the person who booked the place had like 30 5-star reviews as a guest. And I can't figure out how somebody who's stayed at Airbnb so much would have zero concept of like etiquette or communication with your hosts, or like just general, like, if I put the booking for one person, should I also have 12 or 14 people? No, probably not. Anyway, weird. But it's not, we've never left a bad review for somebody. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe it would be better if I just like messaged the girl, the woman, and said kind of all of this in some way. And like, is there something she could say or do to make it so that we don't feel like we have to leave a bad review? Because then maybe we should give her the chance to make things right without a bad review. But even if she paid for the plumber, paid for the carpet cleaning, paid an extra guest fees, apologized profusely, said she had like, you know, some sort of a massive lapse in, you know, she thought she messaged us but she got confused and apparently she didn't. You know, if maybe all of those things happened, then maybe we'd be like, you know, there were some issues, but we got them worked out. You know, no problem. But I don't know. Short of that, I just don't think it's worth, I just don't know that it's worth the back and forth about it. still, like, I don't think it'll matter to her, you know, getting Airbnbs later. I was thinking that in the future, you know, if somebody makes a reservation for 2 people, maybe we just leave them with 1 bed made or 2 beds made. Maybe we only fill up 1 bathroom with stuff, but that, you know, it just feels like, what are we doing? We're not trying to give our guests a stingy experience. We're trying to give our guests the best experience we possibly can. And that's why if this lady had said, hey, you know, it's one of my buddy's birthdays, like, we were hoping to have like a few extra people over for a little thing. You know, they'll be staying until midnight, but then everybody will leave. We'll be aware of the noise after 9. You know, like, there's so many little things you could do leading up to having a few people over. And we would have been like, sure, yeah, here's our fee for each extra guest over 6. Here's, you know, the little bit of the extra rules around that number of people. Please make sure all of your guests know not to flush feminine products down the toilet, even though the sign says that very clearly. Oh yeah, and you know, then there was, like, you know, blood stains on one of the beds, on one of the mattress pads, like, which is fine. Women can't, we're not, who cares about that? Throw your tampons away. They're a nightmare. They absorb water and they get big, and then they block pipes when there's a couple of them fighting. Anyway. And if they had had like all those people over, and left the place, you know, tidy, okay, you know, that would suck too, because, come on. And it would still be worth, for sure, like, if you just go based on like the Airbnb 5-star, 4-star, I mean, 5 stars is like, people shouldn't get a lot of 5 stars based on like what it actually says. It's like, you know, perfect, it's exemplary. Everybody gets 5 stars, everybody gives 5 stars, like, you know, you never give less than 5 stars if nothing is wrong. That's just the culture of it. But the place wasn't clean, and we did have to, I mean, we spent more than half of the money from the booking to fix the house up after the booking. So it's no good.
You got yeah. Yeah, screwed up right here. I took off about 1 inch and 2 inches too much. We okay? Out of gas. Guess we'll top up the oil while we're over here. All right, I'm gonna grab a drink, try to flatten out a couple of the bigger differences in height there. just looking up, pulling up my how to build a log cabin book. I wonder if it's better to log a forest that's at a high risk of burning. Maybe not like a clear cut, but really thin it. Like really turn up industrial logging in certain areas at certain times. Is that better? But in possible anticipation of a possible wildfire. Because once the wildfire hits, there's nothing, it's a complete waste. I don't know. I'm sure somebody's thought about it who has some knowledge of how wildfires start and burn. I think I know how they start. No. No, that's annoying. That should work. Okay. I wonder where the next, I think the next 3/4 sill that I had picked out is still up on the hillside. Yeah, so I'll probably cut the stream here and try to get up on the hill and just get that, start getting that big girl down. Maybe I'll use my truck. Maybe I'll try that at least. If I do that, I'll probably start up the stream again because it might be interesting to watch. All right. Love you, Mom. Bye.